dispossessed, taken hold. My hunger burns, a bullet hole. Spectre.
Hello and welcome to day 28 of Bondcember. We are talking about the final Daniel Craig film so far, Spectre. I am Tom.
I'm Joe.
Spectre. Spectre.
It's like it's fine.
It's okay. It's solid, but the problem is that it's solid in a let's just go back and basically reintroduce like this huge criminal organization and pretend this was always our plan all along approach.
Yeah. My thing is, on paper, this is the greatest James Bond film of all time. It is a culmination of the entire Daniel Craig era, which is one of the high points for the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, depending on how nice you want to be to Quantum of Solace. And it is bringing in one of the great old villains. And it is culminating it by using elements from all of the James Bond movie and the best James Bond movies. It's not just using, you know, it's not like Die Another Day where we're gonna, you know, bring in the, you know, plane from Octopussy for one scene, or, you know,
Rosa Kleb's shoes. No, this is...
but they're gonna bring in elements, and they're going to bring in a, you know, a Diana Rigg like, you know, character who is like going to be, you know, the love of his life, and it's going to culminate in him like completely choosing to change how he does things. And it is all of these things and more, and all of this is on paper. So on paper, this is like, wow, this is a grand slam. We're going to knock it out of the park.
Yeah. You know, really good actor as your essentially returning Bond villain. Oh, and there's a strong linkage to your character, to your protagonist. And you know, you give a couple of characters suitable send-offs who obviously have been here since the start of the Craig thing. Unfortunately, in execution,
something is lost. It's like it's not all there, and I like the movie. I think it is a solid movie. Yeah. But, you know, what's missing, I get with the people who are really down on this movie. Because it's like, what is there is occasionally bewildering, especially considering this is almost the same group of people who made Skyfall. Yeah. I mean, you don't have Roger Deakins anymore because he's making Blade Runner 2049 look amazing. But but there is no reason to think this didn't work, and the only reason is like then the movie plays out and it just doesn't. I can point to some parts of it and say, hey, okay, this may be, and like,
I mean, let's start at the beginning. What is good about this film?
The opening sequence.
Oh, George, yes.
The opening sequence is one of the greatest, and why you go to James Bond movie, and it's just like, why people like me, yes, James Bond is problematic, and I am not going to disagree with the people, but this is why you go to a James Bond movie.
But holy shit, look at Mexico City.
This, where it is incredible from a filmmaking standpoint, and amazing that they got the funds and you know, approval and all of this to do what they do. And obviously there is, you know, there are some tricks, there are some you know, CG here, and there's some points where obviously they didn't like literally shoot a helicopter falling into a crowd to scare and put people there, but what is there is breathtaking.
So it's ironic that last time we talked about 1917, because even without Roger Deakins, Sam Mendes starts this with a nearly 3-minute single take tracking shot, and it is jaw dropping.
It is jaw dropping. It is incredible, and it is not in the ways that British tracking shots usually are. Because I'm trying to think of that one movie that had the long tracking shot and starts with an A. God. But there was a long tracking shot with like soldiers running around, and it was all mechanical, and it was all feels like it was orderly and stuff like that. And it just there's a fake feeling on these tracking shots. That you're just watching like choreography. That's the word. But it's just like and then you get to this one, and this is like real extras going through the Day of the Dead, and they are partying hard, and like if one thing is wrong, you have to start and re-rack this extremely expensive thing over again, and it is like it brings that chaos of life into it, and it is remarkable, and then even after it just keeps going, and then it
in the background.
Going in the background, and then it's just this still incredible scene where it leads up to this thrilling helicopter
fight, essentially.
Scene. The cinematographer is this Swiss cinematographer, Hoyt van Hoytema. I think I may have gotten that name, but
so Hoyt van Hoytema is probably... He is a collaborator with the Swedish director who did both Let the Right One In, which is this extremely... one of my favourite films, which is the Swedish vampire film, and also Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, the adaptation of the Jean le Carré novel, also by, I think it's the same guy who then went on to do the Snowman. But he also has done Ad Astra. He also did the cinematography for Interstellar, Dunkirk, Tenet, and Ad Astra, which I thought was one of the better films of last year, but there we go.
I liked Ad Astra well enough, but it does look extremely good. And what he does, I mean, I had to get over the disappointment of not Roger Deakins. And,
but it's Roger Deakins, there's only one of him, unfortunately.
One of the things that's improved in my mind rewatching this a few times is that the movement is exceptionally good in this movie.
Oh, God, yes.
Like, there are incredible, like, looking scenes, like... the lighting might be same-ish for the entire movie, but you get these like really great shots. Like there's a shot in the middle of a car chase where a car is going up to the hill, and it's going through these woods, and it pans up to where they're going, and it is you follow the motion, and it follows, and the thing itself is following it, and it's all extremely good, and it looks extremely fluid, and it's like that movement follows it for most of the movie. And so I've got over my disappointment on that real quick when it's like, oh wow, these are really impressive shots, and it just to that certain extent, it's so the opening sequence.
Yeah, the opening sequence. So, there's actually a really bizarre and interesting story behind this. Basically, prior to this being shot, the Mexican Day of the Dead festivities were... they were not like this.
No.
And subsequent to Spectre's release, the kind of obviously the city, because this is obviously shot in Mexico City, the authorities of Mexico City took one look at this and went, tourists are going to be really disappointed if it doesn't look like this.
Yeah.
So they went back and they basically own, I think obviously there's some agreement with them, but basically the Mexican Day of the Dead festivities now include most of the floats from this sequence on a yearly basis. Yeah. It's this bizarre sort of moment. It's like, you want them like this? Okay, I suppose we can. It's sort of this generally brilliant little moment when like Bond as Bond, like some films obviously have done over the years, has actually changed the culture that it interacts with.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, after that, obviously Bond steals. Obviously, Bond takes a ring off one of the gentlemen before throwing him out of the helicopter, and it's at this point we get the single worst Bond song ever.
Yeah.
Oh god, where do we fucking start with this thing?
I want to say the orchestration is really good, and we didn't get to talk a whole lot about this. The Sam Mendes, the music scores are extremely lush, and they're like amazing in like ways that David Arnold couldn't do, because they are just, oh goodness, Thomas Newman is the guy who did the music. I am blanking on names because we've been doing this for about 2.5 hours, and I've had a lot of names going through my head.
Yeah.
But Thomas Newman is the composer, and he does really extremely good, lush orchestral cues, and he adds this to the Bond, and it all feels old and new at the same time, and it's wonderful. And the music to Writings on the Wall is the same thing. Like, the intro is good, and then you get to Sam Smith singing, and it's a little better in the movie version, but when I first heard it, it's just like, it is a person crying on the phone to their ex in the middle of the night.
And I should add, I've got nothing against Sam Smith as a performer.
Oh no. I am not going to put any of this on them at all. No, but it's just like they were not the right fit, and this was not the right song.
And it's particularly not great when you look at what could have been there.
Yeah.
Because this is so. In the 90s, Radiohead were working on a song called Man of War. Radiohead was ironically enough, massive fans of Bond. They are they've covered Bond songs.
You wouldn't think they would be.
They're like the most anti-capitalist band in the mainstream. It's like, no, they are absolutely. So they had a song called Man of War. Man of War has never actually had a studio release up until, I believe, it was a rarities collection. So they've obviously had their hat in the ring for sort of, we would love to do a Bond theme. And there's some other bands who obviously have done songs recently that sort of like, you get this was meant to be a Bond theme and was intended to be. There's for example, the Muse song Madness, or there's a Muse song which has a very, this feels awfully like a Bond song sort of structure. So basically Radiohead were very, very keen to do the theme for Spectre, but basically somebody said, well, you can't just give us Man of War because we want to win an Oscar. And this is one of the things we didn't mention with Skyfall, is Skyfall was the first Bond song in like absolutely fucking ages to win an Oscar. And it's like, okay, we would like another.
I don't think did a Bond theme? I thought this was the first one that did.
I believe it might. Well, no, because one of the other ones did. I can't remember which one it was.
Okay. I know Live and Let Die was nominated.
Yeah, no, I think one of them, something one, but it's like, anyway, so basically they went, well, we can't, because basically the Oscars have this rule, you cannot use existing compilation, and it's partly why I believe the soundtrack for The Artist a couple of years before obviously Spectre came out was basically when, no, this contains existing bits of music from another film's score, so it's ineligible. So basically they went, you're going to have to go and record something else. And they went and recorded something else, and it's spelled Spectre, and it's on, they've digitally released it shortly after this film came out, and from what Sam Mendes says, it's like, no, we tried to find somewhere to put this in the film, but it didn't work. And it's like, so you looked at this, you looked at Sam Smith's confessional down the phone thing, and you went, well, it's got to be that, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's frustrating, because it's like, and there are versions of it on the internet. There are, like, people have obviously gone and taken, you know, the track Spectre and put it over the opening credit, and it works really well. It genuinely, like, somebody must have gone to somebody. It's either they made the calculated decision that nobody's going to give Radiohead an Oscar, which is a bizarre sort of choice, or Sam Smith was regarded as them as more flavour of the month, or...
I think the reason Bond movies are just automatically winning the Oscar, though, these days, is that there's no other people doing regular music.
Well, apart from Disney.
For films. Like, they're musicals. There's, like, La La Land and, you know, stuff like that. But, you know, La La Land got an Oscar for its most unmemorable song because it was there and it was original.
Yeah, and, like, Best Song Oscar basically has, for the last, you know, decade, really been dominated by either Disney or Bond. It's like, well, we could choose between, you know, these 5 Disney songs because Disney are putting out so much film-wise at the moment. Or we can pick a Bond song, and it's like, well, you basically have one of 2 choices, don't you? And you might occasionally get like something else.
The Oscars are like, I want to be an adult. I want to be an adult, and I'm going to put the Pixar movies in the best animated film ghetto, where I don't have to look at them. And I'm going to pick the adult thing for best song, and we're going to do James Bond.
Yeah, and so on. I mean, as I think we've discussed ourselves, you know, obviously a way, like, No Time to Die might not be a particularly brilliant song, but you're looking at it and going, yeah, that's going to win best song next year, because there's nothing else. There's, like, you know, the soundtrack for Soul and, like, a couple of other Disney films, but the idea of giving, you know, another Disney film the best song Oscar after about 3 years in a row is probably not a great
2021 is going to be interesting because we are going to be packed with movies. We're going to have, like, 2 years worth of movies in one. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes from that.
But we'll see, as I said. But it's I feel it's where the problems start, because it's like it feels you know, if Quantum of Solace felt like it was trying to be, you know, Casino Royale Part 2, this feels like Skyfall Part 2. So it just tries to do everything that Skyfall does while sort of, you know, doing other stuff. It is
trying to be every greater James Bond moment in one movie, and the moments are not as good, and they don't connect as well. So what you have is something that is reminding you of something greater all the time that is not as good, which is I don't know. It's jumping around a bit, but it's like James Bond goes up, you know, is finding all the things. Like, he finds the widow of the person he killed in Mexico City, and then she gives him enough information to move on to the next point. Eventually, he finds this place where, you know, Spectre is holding their meetings, and he walks in on them, not knowing. So we get introduced to Dave Bautista's Hinks, who is their tribute to Oddjob.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because Oddjob was played by Harold Sakata, a former wrestler, and we have Dave Bautista, who is a former WWE wrestler, and who is an incredibly good actor. We mentioned 2049. He only has one scene in that movie, but he's incredibly good in it. Yeah,
he's probably one of the better sort of wrestlers wrestlers turned actors.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other sort of Bond henchman, I think he borrows quite a bit from his Jaws, because he's the big silent guy, and he basically obviously what happens to sort of instigate this is their former assassin, who is obviously Mr. White, dies fairly early on in this by his own hand, because essentially Spectre have decided he's out of the picture, he's damaged goods, and Mr. Hinks basically comes in, sort of takes the guy that they've got and breaks his neck. Yeah, and it's a really good introductory scene, and I like it, but then they don't really do anything much with him.
Like, the next thing he does is a car chase with James Bond, and that's what I don't want to do with your odd job characters, is put them in a car chase. That's not what you do with them.
No, you put another mook in there, you go, hey, this is another, I don't know, an associate of Mr. Hinks, and Mr. Hinks sort of, watching on screen or something.
The one who does all the talking for him, or something. You have him do that, and then Mr. Hinks comes in later. And then later they have Mr. Hinks do a broad variety of James Bond scenes. Like, it's the end of it's like from Russia with Love, where you had the Red Grant scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you had the end of Live and Let Die, which is, it's probably better than that, but but you have, but because he is like the odd job character who doesn't speak except for his last line before he dies, like, he does not have that same presence as Red Grant.
It certainly doesn't have the presence of the great...
this scene isn't as good. The scene on the train it's very physical. It's very... I mean, it's well done, but it doesn't work the same way. And the only reason it's... the only reason I would, it sticks out, it's because it's trying to be one of the greatest sequences in James Bond.
Yeah.
And it's not, because these pieces don't fit here.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest vibe I get off Spectre is that it's basically trying to be... we talked about Die Another Day being, Bond's greatest... Bond's, a summary. This is trying to be Bond's greatest hits all at once. It's like, we have to have...
to be... if Die Another Day was it through, like, Roger Moore and Pierce Brosnan glasses, this is trying to be Timothy Dalton, Sean Connery, Daniel Craig thing. So it's serious, and which is really weird when they go for, like, obviously the I can't remember, he says a swear word before, like, he gets pulled off the train and killed, and that's it's a Looney Tunes line, and it's like, it is in this serious movie that's thinks it's dead serious, and it doesn't have... it's not that, James Bond, Daniel Craig is super serious. He does have his lines, he does have his fun moments, and it has that, but there's just this really weird thing about when it's trying to put everything in through this serious tone, that in Die Another Day, it could probably take it... Some people will definitely disagree with it. It could take being extremely goofy, because it was going through a lens, but if you put this goofy in this, when it's, the previous film these people did was super operatic, super serious, and super personal, it
doesn't work. It really doesn't. And let's get to what I have the biggest problem with, which is, I'm going to be entirely honest, and I mean this is not because he's one of my favourite actors. But what the hell is he doing in this film?
Christoph Waltz?
What is Christoph Waltz doing in this film?
There is a specific... whatever specific thing Quentin Tarantino does to Christoph Waltz that puts it in, like, the absolute greatest performances you've ever seen in your life is missing here. It is...
Yeah, it's like...
Like, Christoph Waltz doing villains is, like, not... with Quentin Tarantino is very odd. Like, I saw him, like, in the Three Musketeers movie, directed by the guy who did the Resident Evil movies.
Oh,
Paul
God.
W. S. Anderson.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it's like, he's not very good in that.
No.
And then you will... there are a couple things where I've also seen him where he is not a very good villain. I think, the Green Hornet. He was the villain in the Green Hornet movie that... Like,
nobody saw.
Like... That was... That nobody... It's one of the most inexplicable movies I've ever seen in my life. Because it's directed by Michel Gondry.
Oh, God.
And, like... it's this old 70s TV show.
Yeah, but brought back in the period when I think they were doing...
Christoph Waltz as the villain. And it's like, what is this?
Yeah.
What am I looking at?
Yeah,
and that's
like...
a lot of Christoph Waltz villain roles.
And it's like he's solid.
I don't know why, and it's just like, it starts well enough. They do the Spectre meeting, and he's in the shadows, and you hear his voice, and his voice is very on point, very powerful, very villainous.
Yeah.
And then the moment it starts to unravel is he comes out of the shadow, he looks up at James, and it's like, cuckoo, cuckoo.
Oh god. Oh god,
And it's
yeah.
like,
It's
oh, no.
oh boy, here we go.
And it is, and then like this entire character was mishandled by them wanting to personally add it to Daniel. All Daniel Craig's suffering was made by him. But
of course that's just bolted on, like, you know.
Yeah, it is bolted on. It is like you're trying to put a modern minimalist addition to Downton Abbey. It's just not gonna fucking work.
It just genuinely, I look at it and go, and I think it's there's this great alternate version of this film where he comes out in the shadows in the last like 30 minutes of the film, and he goes, okay, you know, I have been puppeteering this all along, James. Oh, and by the way, you know, I feel if it had like done a bait and switch, if it had gone with, you know, Bond thinks he's investigating another villain who's part of this group, it would have been so much better.
Yeah.
And what we get is 2 and a bit hours of Christopher Waltz munching on scenery.
Yeah, and then he pulls back on the sinister villain and becomes sinister dentist. Like when he goes, like the big scene is, like they think it's going to be the big scene where James Bond is held at the secret Spectre thing that secretly controls the world. So they bring him into this room where he does brain surgery with lasers. So they're going to do the laser thing like in Goldfinger. Yep. And he has the Blofeld, you know, Chinese tunic.
And the white cap.
Yeah.
There's a goddamn white cap. I mean, it's like, it's this strange, as I said, it's the thing I think we talked about with, again, to bring it back up, the world is not enough, but it's sort of like in the opposite direction. It's like these really goofy moments in this otherwise really serious film, whereas obviously, you know, The World Is Not Enough is a really goofy film played serious. It's like, what are you doing?
Whereas
There's a
the Die Another Day, there's actually like this semi-heartfelt story about a father and a son with the villains.
Yeah.
Then we have this serious story about, you know, one brother who intentionally sabotages the life of another brother.
Featuring Christopher Waltz making cuckoo noises.
Cuckoo noise. And then we have the cat, and then we have, you know, like him, like his little, you know, walking to the computer console, tuck, 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 and then it goes, which, I mean, I can see why, on paper, why they thought that scene would work, because it is, like, having somebody laser into your brain, like, yeah, that is a...
That is an unpleasant
that
thing
is
to happen.
A very tactile fear, and it doesn't work here, because I don't think, like...
It doesn't capture that whole sense of it properly.
And when they do, like, laser into James's brain for a little second, there's not that moment of, oh, wait, something irreparably damage has happened to him. Nope, he's still James Bond. He throws out the watch, and then it blows, and then he escapes, and...
the movie carries on.
Then he carries on like nothing happened, and then it's just like, okay, so...
What was the point of that, then?
What was the point of that? And that's, you know, a lot of the second half, and...
Yeah.
Wow, I am the person who, like, came out on the positive end of this movie.
Yeah,
and I'm sounding like I don't like it. But it's just like, I do this movie has problems, and it is inviting comparisons where they shouldn't be. It is putting goofy stuff where it shouldn't be, and they're trying to have fun, but they're trying to have fun in a movie that really
doesn't want to have fun.
Be locked down and be on point.
Yeah,
and we're just
and nowhere is this clearer than Andrew Scott. I have genuinely no idea what Andrew Scott is doing in this film as C. It's just like, aha, I am actually a member of Spectre and have been manipulating you all along. And it's like, yeah, we can see that you're obviously like a villain from 5 minutes in. Mate, you were playing Moriarty 2 years ago. We know not to trust you.
And he is on the plot where there's this big, overwhelming plot about worldwide, surveillance. And the thing is, they're going to hook it up to Spectre system, and then Spectre will have control of the world. And what? There's a really weird undertone where Blofeld is just going to make like worldwide illegal prostitution, and that's it. What his big thing is, just like, we were fine with but you're bringing women and children into prostitution. It's like, what are you doing? You're going mad. And it's just like, this is a thing that felt like it was a bigger part of the movie before they hammered in like he's James Bond's brother. Well, adopted.
Yeah, adopted. Let's not get into complicated things.
But then that's a plot thread that just goes nowhere. But it just meant to imply that he's unhinged, and he's just like going off this thing where even the evil people are like, what the hell are you doing, man? Because he's so obsessed with getting Bond. But it doesn't track like that. It's just like, it's a dangling thread over here. But,
and it's like, and that's the thing. I could see a version of this where this goes, where Blofeld, because he eventually reveals himself to be Blofeld, as if the white cat and sort of love of Chinese tunics all along wasn't a massive guess, Yeah. And it's like, there is a version of this where he eventually destroys his plan to, get back at Bond, where he's basically accidentally or intent or sort of knowingly sabotaging himself to destroy Bond. And it's like, this is why he's screwing up, because he literally is obsessed with destroying Bond. Yeah. And it never gets...
Slight tweaks you could do to this movie, and it would be the movie they want it to be. Even if it's like kind of underperforms on the iconic James Bond stuff.
Yeah, and the thing is with it, it's strange. I can only describe it as this sort of strange sort of... Nothing in this feels important in a weird way.
The way I put it after I watched the movie is that there are no iconic signature things in this movie that feels like it should be full of them. Like, there is no one thing. It's like, hell yeah, that's Spectre. That is the money shot from Spectre. We're going to put that on the trailer, and it's going to sell all the tickets.
Yeah, the closest thing I can think is... Yeah, the closest thing I can actually think is, ironically, his introduction, silhouetted, and it's a shot that obviously comes up the quickest when you sort of Google this film. It's the shot of, Christopher Waltz in, basically hidden from camera, in silhouette with the Italian sunset behind him.
Yeah.
But that literally is a spoiler.
Yeah.
And it's like,
But
what can you do with
now
that?
I gotta go back through my threads, and it's just like, why I like this movie. Like, the movie as by itself works well enough. Like, going through, we have Monica Bellucci as Lucia, who is the wife of the guy who gets killed in Mexico City at the beginning, and he's like, you have brought doom upon me, and she plays the scene really well, and it's like a scene between Daniel Craig and a woman actually his age. So, and I think she brings like an authority to it, and she kind of disappears from the movie immediately afterwards.
Yeah, although we get a name,
what happens to her, but it's they have a very good scene together. And then we have all the stuff leading up to Spectre, and like going into the meeting, it's really good. It's obvious it's a setup, but and then like the car chase for as much as Hinks shouldn't be here. It's
a good car chase. It's
a very good car chase between two extremely expensive cars.
Yeah, and there's this great second moment where he has an old Fiat 500 in front of him, and it's slightly off. It's like, out the way, please, out the way, please, out the way. Your car is like ancient, and
that's where a goofy movie moment works. it's a well shot movie. Like I said, it moves really well.
Yeah.
And it never really spends too much time on any part of the movie that where it feels like it doesn't. Yes, it spends a long time with Blofeld, and Blofeld is kind of a blown character, but they don't spend too much time on one part of it. Like they're moving from like him being at the Spectre headquarters, and then they go to this desert, and then he's explaining the organization and the meteorite that made this place, and they explain it in the place. It's supposed to make this place seem more interesting than it is, and then we have the dentist scene, which I know it's a mind laser, but it's a dentist office, and he's dressed like a dentist.
Well,
so
James,
that's how it comes off.
Well, James, you have many molars that are not clean, James. We must clean the molars, James. Which, given he just played a dentist earlier that year, and
everything is solid. Everything, aside from whatever you want to say from Christoph Waltz and like him choosing to go a direction they didn't want. They probably shouldn't have with Blofeld. Everything is solid. And this, if everything was worked, everything fit together, this would have been one of the greatest James Bond films of all time.
But I feel it has one massive redeeming feature, which is Lea Seydoux. Okay. She is absolutely exceptional in this.
Okay, I will say her performance is good. But the problem is she is supposed to be Diana Rigg in On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
I will concede that, absolutely. But this is a film where I feel a lot of its characters, with the possible exception of Mr. White, who probably gets the single best, scene in the film. It's sort of, the idea that, there is no escape from Spectre. This sort of, until you die. Sort of... And it's sort of I feel it's sort of fitting that they do bring back, him for this, even briefly, and that there is a connection between, obviously, because Lea Seydoux's character is, the daughter of this character of him, and you get this sort of sense that, you never, even if this is something your father did, you never really escape, in this sort of world. You don't escape. Just because you're the child of XYZ. And that sort of,
she gets a lot of monologues about being a child and, like, being interrupted by people who come in the middle of the night or something like that. And those are really good. It's just, like, when it comes to the, between her and Daniel Craig, it doesn't feel the same way it feels like Ava Green or... like even Camille in Olga Kurylenko and Quantum of Solace, when they have their like moments and they have their understanding, it's like they don't feel like they have the same chemistry. It feels like they are saying their lines they're performing in different things.
Yeah, which makes me both apprehensive
we are seeing
and
two separate performances in two separate movies. That's
and I'm not joking, I'm slightly apprehensive of where No Time to Die is going to go with. Because there's a lot... probably of this is... Of all the Bond films, this is carrying over quite a degree and quite an amount of stuff straight from Spectre to, obviously No Time to Die. You've got, obviously, Blofeld will be returning, obviously, because he is captured at the end of this film. And obviously Lea Seydoux's character will be returning, and it's sort of like, okay, but what, will the new director carry Joji Fukunaga, I completely mangle this man's poor man's name now, carry Joji Fukunaga, what will he bring to these characters that obviously he's picked up from Mendes?
Well, and he's picking up from Danny Boyle. Danny Boyle was originally supposed to... they had creative differences, and I'm not surprised they had creative differences with Danny Boyle. Because Danny Boyle wants to go all the way on the edge, or he wants to do something crazy. And sometimes it works. Sometimes you get sometimes a life less ordinary.
Yeah, No Time to Die is going to be an interesting film, even before we got this, this enforced wait for it.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that means they can take a look at the movie and it's just like, hey, what works, what is not working here? But who knows if they even have the system where they can test screen? I mean, I know test screening is an evil thing because it's taking away from villains, but having somebody watch your stuff or look over it is extremely helpful.
Yes, absolutely.
And even if they do it in a soulless commercial fashion, it can tell you things that you didn't, know you needed to tell them.
Yeah, absolutely.
In storytelling, it's like there are things that have been in your head for months, and you know this, but maybe some way you're not communicating this, but or there's something that doesn't work. But
we'll see how it goes.
I imagine they didn't touch a damn thing on it, and we're just going to get the movie they have.
Yeah, but we'll never know
they've
that.
Been keeping for a year.
But we'll never know that, and we don't know actually, obviously, whether this will get subsequent recutting and whatever to make it even better. We don't know. Obviously, we was, we're not unfortunately, whilst we are both big Bond fans, we're not privy to the inner machinations. No.
I only had the newsletter for a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, Carrie, if you're listening, we would love to see this film, and we would love to be able to talk about this on this podcast. Do drop us a line or email somewhere on it.
I feel like I don't really have any more to say about Spectre. I think it's fine. I mean, again, what sticks out about it sticks out, and the only reason why it, like, Skyfall really works for you is because, like, the good stuff is really good, exceptionally good, and this one it's works at a 7 most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It never feels like it's in top gear at any point of this film. No. I'm not particularly surprised that Mendes left this to go and do other stuff, because it is. It's there. It's solid. It's a Bond film. It does, the things you expect a Bond film to do, and nothing more. And it's sort of like, it brings back familiar elements. It sort of puts a new spin on a certain number of them, but you get this sense throughout the show that this is sort of, it feels like a movie worth a setup.
Yeah,
for very little payoff.
Daniel Craig needed another movie before this. Or something that was just going to let a Bond movie be a Bond movie before you did this thing that leads up to it, because everything is too jam-packed and happening too quickly, because you've already got the first 2 movies being his first adventure, and then he's an old hat rogue of this organization, and now this is the culmination of his life, and it's just like, well, that's essentially 3 movies, because Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace are supposed to be one movie, but because of how they made Quantum of Solace, nobody is ever going to do a back-to-back marathon of Quantum of Solace and Casino Royale, because the only reason I think they would do it is because Quantum of Solace is short, and that's the only reason I would think anybody would be insane enough to do this. But anyway, I feel like we don't want to talk about Spectre anymore.
No, I think we've had enough of Spectre, and it's sort of a pity that we've sort of ended up with sort of a bit of a damp script to end, because this has been a hell of a journey. But it's not quite over yet, because tomorrow we will be talking about, well, the worst of Bond. So we will be doing, our least favourite Bond villains, girls, and other stuff, and our least favourite Bond themes, and our least favourite films. So we will see you tomorrow.